People in this town just stood no chance. In some parts, the raging torrent was more than 20 metres deep. Now, this elevated point that we're on at the moment is in fact the area that people are supposed to gather in the event of a tsunami. But as you can see, all of this went underwater as well. Instead, the army is searching further up the coast. What they are yelling is anybody here alive? We all know the answer to that question, but they press on regardless. Time is certainly of the essence here. Rescue workers always talk about the 100-hour window to find survivors. Well, sadly today, that all-important window's shut. Well, this is the fury of nature at its most extreme. Complete and total devastation. We're in Sendai. This was the first town to feel the full force of that tsunami. And have a look around here. Cars everywhere have just been tossed around like they weigh about a kilogram. Buildings have been completely smashed to pieces, and scenes like this span the whole coastline along here. Anyone that was in this area when the disaster hit would have stood no chance of survival. We're about a kilometre in from the coast, but still, look at this. There are fish on the ground here that have just been carried in by the force of this amazing but frightening disaster. To put things into perspective, you pay 38 cents of tax for every litre of petrol that you buy. It reaps the government about $16 billion every year. But of your 38 cents, only 7 cents ends up being allocated to roads projects. It means more than 80% of your money is spent elsewhere. It's amazing to think how these people are surviving in what is effectively the middle of the Indian Ocean. They've jammed as many people as humanly possible on here. From this point, we can see the vessel taking on water. Well, northern New South Wales has been suffering from a massive disaster of its own over the last 24 hours, but because of what's been going on in Queensland, we just haven't heard too much about it. But the damage bill here is going to run into the hundreds of millions of dollars. You only need to look at townships like this, Harwood, where pretty much every single house is underwater. We've been hovering over for the last 15 minutes or so. A few people are trying to stick it out, playing the waiting game to see if they can fight off these rising waters.
With the bookies picking Spain as the hot favourite to take victory. Nine's Tom Steinfort is in Johannesburg. Tom, before we get to the final, Germany and Uruguay battled out for third place this morning.
Yeah, it was a great win by the Germans, although you probably wouldn't pick it given their reactions after the game. They looked like they'd won 11 tickets to a funeral, not third place. Clearly they were hoping for first. This was a bit of consolation for them in the end. The Uruguayans pushed them all the way. It was an absolutely sensational game. 5 goals in all, 3-2 for Germany. The lead seesawed, but the Germans hung on in the end. Probably a deserved win for them, and if the final can be half as good as this game, then we really are in for a spectacular finish. I've just been told by the promoter, they say they have had 500 million hits on their website since this ticket ballot was announced. That's not 5 million, 500 million. 500 million people clicking on, wanting to see how they may be able to get tickets for this event. We clearly expected it was going to be huge, but this will be the biggest show that Los Angeles has seen in years, taking place at the Staples Center behind me. They can only get 20,000 people in that venue, and then there'll be 6,000 overflowing into the Nokia Theatre, but clearly these are the most sought after tickets in town. Now, Connect has always been about you being the controller with your arms, but now you can make yourself a character in the game as well, and the machine scans you and comes up with an avatar. Apparently, that's me. Are my teeth really that big? It's 6 years since Thomas falsified his passport, and since then he's been under constant scrutiny from both the media and police. Now he's hoping that all of this attention can fade and he and his family can return to a life of anonymity. The call centre industry is worth more than $1 billion a year to the economy here, and you've only got to come to an industrial hub like this to see just how big it is. Every one of these buildings here houses a call centre. Some of them are big brands that you'd recognise like HSBC, but most of them are Filipino companies. They contract out to foreign organisations. Take Convergys over there, for example. Pretty much every time you call Optus, there's a pretty fair chance it's someone from that business that's actually taking your call. For every miraculous escape, though, there are dozens of sad stories. In this building over here, a number of people are unaccounted for, and waiting in the park opposite are their family and friends, desperate for any news. So many parts of town you can see
there were people going about their normal business. There are buses that were running down streets. You can see now they have just been absolutely crushed by falling buildings across the city. There are all sorts of different rescue operations that you can see underway today. Hopefully they can get in there quickly enough, but they just don't know how many people are in all of these buildings. And when it comes to houses as well, it's only the ones really on the fringe of the CBD in Christchurch that have been affected the worst. And so many historic buildings here, the famous cathedral, a number of other churches on the fringe, built, you know, a century ago. They weren't meant to withstand this, and clearly they just couldn't stand up to the power of this earthquake.